Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, in the earlier video, we saw about the dimensions of ethics like prescriptive ethics, normative ethics, um, meta ethics, etc. In this video, we'll also be looking into the dimension of the that is applied ethics, which we have not seen in the earlier lecture. So, there are different dimensions of ethics. Before which, let's look into what is applied ethics. See, applied ethics is nothing but it is concerned with analysis of particular moral issues. It might be in private or public life. So it also deals with such concrete subjects such as family, profession, state, politics, which are happening in real life situations, and the ethical principles which can be applied for it for securing a new life. This is something applied ethics deals with it. So let's get into one by one different applied ethics one by one. Administrative ethics. As a civil servant, it is a very must need for everyone. As a civil servant aspirant, it's a must need for everyone. So when we get into the administration, there are certain points which must always be noted, like transparency, integrity, objectivity, compassion, impartiality, along with honesty, trustworship, and these are some few parts. Let's look into detail about that. Transparency. See, when you come into transparently, you should know that it does not only follow the transparency laws, but at the same time, it should also disclose the information to public, which can be used to prevent the corruption and fraudulent decisions, and also show the public the accurate picture of the government. So, like information, furnishing of information under the RTI Act. This is an example which can be cited. And to be noted, what does this transparency does is, I mean, when there is no transparency, as Woodrow Wilson says, corruption thrives in secret places and avoids public places. When the transparency is not there, when the administration is opaque, eventually corruption thrives. That's what Woodrow Wilson has said in a quote. Next is integrity. So, integrity is nothing but upholding the moral principles at any point of time and situation. Nothing else matter if there is integrity. A good examples can be cited as civil servants like Ashok Kimka and Sanjeev Taturvedi set a good example for present and the future civil servants. Next is objectivity. So civil servants must take decisions solely based on facts and logic. Like you just because you feel that or you're emotionally biased towards one community or not biased and have some feelings towards other community. No, that does not work here with respect to administration. You have to take decision only based on facts and logic without any influence from bias or prejudice. See, one more thing is that if objectives are not set in any missions like polio eradication, their monitoring would have been impossible. And objectivity is something which drives this implementation. Next is compassion. In a developing country like India, where poverty and hunger are widespread, civil servants must learn to be compassionate to the weaker sections, which in order to meet their needs. Let's say, example, if a beneficiary under a scheme does not have valid documents, a public servant should not simply reject the application but should try to make efforts to obtain those necessary documents and provide him with the benefits he or she is entitled to. You should show your compassion towards others. Next is impartiality. Civil servants must treat everyone equally, regardless of their religion, class, caste, or whatever it may be. Impartiality is very critical in maintaining the people's trust in democracy. Articles 14 and 15 of the Indian Constitution guarantee the right to equality for all Indian citizens. So, this is something which can be said with respect to administrative ethics. Next, let us deal with bioethics. See, bioethics is the study of ethical issues emerging from the advances in biology and medicine. So, it addresses a broad range of human issues ranging from debates over boundaries of life like abortion, euthanasia, surrogacy, to the allocation of scarce health resources like organ donation, and to the right to refuse the medical care for religious or cultural reasons. Different things which can be said here is privacy. See, when you collect data from a patient or woman or puppy, it must respect the individual's privacy because it might be very sensitive medical information. So, thing is, no people would like to interact or walk with other people who has some life-threatening disease. So that's why the data gathered should be kept in privacy. Next is biopiracy. Advanced countries and their innovations conduct some commercial exploration to gather the biological resources such as DNA, leaves, tissues, so on, from the developing countries in the tropical region. Why developing countries in the tropical region, particularly tropical region, is it has high biodiversity compared to other temperate or polar regions. So what they do is biopiracy is the use and exploitation of biological resources by an advanced country from a backward country for profit without sharing with the source country. So it is expected that the developed countries should not exploit the biological resources without sharing the benefits with the source country. So the Nagoya Protocol under the Convention on Biological Diversity, for example, requires the signatories to ensure access and benefit sharing for the greater good of biotechnology and humanity. Next comes the exorcism. So it raises ethical concerns in the context of bioethics due to its use in treating individuals who may be suffering from mental health or neurological conditions. So what happens? It intersects with the bioethics when issues such as autonomy, informed consent, potential harm, and need for evidence-based medical intervention. These things come into the play, and eventually it must be dealt properly. Next, let us deal with the medical ethics. So medical ethics is nothing but dealing with certain factors of in the area of medicine which could otherwise prove to be harmful if not dealt carefully. Some factors such as euthanasia. The moral acceptability of euthanasia differs depending on time and location. It raises serious ethical questions sometimes whether it might be permissible to intentionally end the human life if in case there are some cases where irreversible suffering happens. So in this regard, the Supreme Court of India permitted the passive euthanasia in the Aruna Shanbag case in 2011. So, and it recently permitted an advanced directive, which is also known as living will, for terminally ill patients. Next is prescription. See, when it comes to prescription, we all go to doctors when we suffer from some illness, and doctors give some prescription. So doctors on their part, what they should do is give the most affordable and effective medicine to their patients, such as generic drugs, rather than the expensive patented drugs. So a good example, very good example we can cite here is the government of India running the Jan Aushadhi Yojana, which increases the supply of the generic medicines. patient identity. Medical ethics requires the doctor to treat all the patients with honesty and commitment, regardless of their identity or background, even if the patient is criminal. So you have to deal them very equally and inform them with whatever it may be. Informed consent. Patients should be given complete information about the procedure they are about to have, and consent for the same should be taken before proceeding with it. Like, for example, you cannot go and take some patient's kidney without their consent. It is clearly unethical. But when you have informed them and taken their consent of taking their kidney due to some problems in the kidney, so that is something ethical. So you have to inform them and get their access or consent before proceeding with it. Next, let us deal with the media ethics. Again, here objectivity comes into place. So media personnel should report facts rather than having bias or prejudice. The media, when it comes to media, it should report all sorts of information from all points of view. It must also give consideration to all points as well as the facts. Next one is ownership. So media organization must avoid the concentrated ownership, particularly in the hands of vested interests such as politicians, businessmen and others, because what they do is they put their organization, their business or their party has a more good, they would show it as a better good one, and so other business, other organization, other parties as bad one. That is something which should not be added, it should not be done. Media ownership on a part should be distributed as widely as possible. Next one is accountability. The media should be held accountable for its mistakes and take appropriate action to right the wrongs. News programs must acknowledge the errors in their reporting while also presenting with correct information. Next is responsibility and sensitivity. See, when covering news, particularly in the live coverage, media professionals must ensure that their coverage does not jeopardize the larger public interest. Like when you cover some terrorist attacks, wars, and so on, the media must exercise reasonable responsibility towards the national interest. Just because you feel like reporting, you should not report. There is some national issue going on. So you have to be some responsible when reporting the national issues and have some focus on the national interest. Next comes the environmental ethics. See, environment, as we all know, right from earlier stages, we have all dealt with environment, and in the recent stage, we are all learning about global warming. It's all because of environment. We did not deal with the environment properly in the earlier centuries. So, how should we deal? Like, you have to ensure the sustainability. The environment and its resources should be used like in such a way that future generations and marginalized groups have enough to meet their basic needs. As Gandhiji has said, no, there's always enough for everyone's need, but not for anyone's greed. This is something we must always take into consideration and minimize the usage of resources. Next is the conservation of biodiversity. Every effort must be taken to eliminate or at least reduce the environmental pollution a bit. This is critical for the preservation of nature as well as the survival of living beings who rely or which rely on natural resources. Example, Chipko movement in India, which fought against the deforestation, is considered as a major movement in the conservation of biodiversity. Next is equal access to natural resources. All living beings have equal access to Mother Nature. As a result, we must ensure that nature is used for benefit for all rather than just a select few. Like because human beings are the highest level in the sixth sense, That doesn't mean you own majority of the natural resources. There are other living beings too: animals, mammals, insects, microorganisms. Every being, living being in its source has equal access to Mother Nature. Right to life and existence of natural creatures. See, every living being on the earth has their right to life and existence. Like humans alone should not consume or exploit other living beings. The earth belongs not only to humans, it also belongs to other living beings too. Next is Mother Nature. So, environmentalist believes that the nature knows best. So, we must treat nature with respect. Otherwise, it will lash out in order to restore the balance. For example, floods, cyclones, landslides, these are all viewed as natural methods to restore the natural order. Next comes the business ethics. So, business ethics is nothing but implementing the appropriate business policies and practices with regard to arguable controversial subjects. Some issues which might come into the place are uh, insider trading, corporate governance, social responsibility, discrimination, etc. Let's deal with a few of them. Conflict of interest. Business professionals must act objectively and fairly regardless of their personal interest. They must take the company first, best interest of the company first, more than their best personal interest. Example: ICICI CEO Chanda Kochar was sanctioned for a conflict of interest in lending to entities that were relating to her husband. So this is something conflict of interest. Next comes the social responsibility. Because businesses make profit, they also have a moral obligation to contribute a reasonable portion of their profits to the welfare of the society around them. The corporate social responsibility (CSR) plays into this. A good example, very good example, which can be cited here is the Tata groups. They have high social responsibility. Next is worker rights. Big industries definitely rely on the labor to generate the output and profits, but those industries are also obliged to provide basic rights and facilities to workers in order for them to work in human conditions, like employee benefits, good pay, recognition can boost the worker productivity and motivation. Next is gender equality. See, usually the economy or a society is patriarchal society. Businesses must act as torchbearers and set examples for gender equality and justice by implementing policies such as equal work for equal pay, maternity leave, anti-sexual harassment bodies, etc. So this is something business ethics must usually follow on. Next, let us look into the ethics of refugee crisis. See, in the recent past, refugee crisis has been a major issues with which many parts of the world are dealing with, starting from Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and recently Russia, Ukraine, and very recently Israel, Palestine. That's a lot of refugee crisis which goes into the play. Certain factors of application which can be dealt are the principle of non-refoulement. This principle prohibits a country from returning a refugee to a country where they may face persecution, but the countries claiming to be democratic and open societies frequently refuse to accept refugees and return them because they feel that it's difficult to handle them. Next is the national responsibility as a global responsibility. Countries Many countries deny asylum, citing limited resources, security threats, and primary responsibility to citizens. However, as a member of the global community, responsibility is frequently violated. In dealing with the refugees, nations must justify their actions on utilitarian grounds while ignoring the deontological aspect, like duty to protect. Next is violation of human rights. Human rights are unalienable rights to life, liberty, and chance to realize one's full potential. Refusing to accept refugees violate their basic life. So one person might be a good swimmer, but when he doesn't get any chance, he loses that basic on top of get one. He might be a refugee, and when he is not accepted into any country, he might face not get his full potential, chance to explore its full potential, and because of which his human rights are violated. Next is historical responsibility. The Western world is to be blamed for many refugee crises, colonial exploitation, and policies such as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. For example, armed humanitarian intervention which led to civil wars in Middle East, climate refugees. Each country which are the source for creating this refugee crisis should accept their accountability for the actions. Ethical standards of society. Dehumanizing refugees and refusing to recognize their suffering sets a very bad example in future, which might lead to a decline in values such as care, empathy, and compassion in society. So we have to set proper ethical standards for society. So hope you guys understood with the application of application applied ethics. So we dealt with different applications of ethics. So hope you guys are clear with it. So in the next lecture we'll be dealing with other further topics in ethics and human interface. So do comment your doubts and we'll try to clear the same doubt as soon as possible. And finally, do like, share, and subscribe the channel and the video with your friends and other aspirants. So thank you guys. Thank you.